It's disheartening to look out on, you see the interstates, the truckers are going past us.
Yeah. Well, in the airlines, if you're going eastbound and you got that good winter jet stream blowing, I've seen 600 knots ground speed.
Yeah.
And I always tap on the gauge and tell my FO, you know, that's our indicated airspeed, the F-16.
Wow.
At 500 feet. You ingress at 480, your normal low level's at 480 knots. And then from the IP to the target is 540, because you're limited to 550 with the bombs on board. And then as soon as you drop the bombs off, then your limitations is faster you want to go. 1.6 or 600 knots. So you turn around, light the burner, and go as fast as you can on the way out without popping the sound.
When I was working in Lebanon, the Israelis came over in their 16 minutes on it.
Right there, it was a pure scope in the country.
There was an officer shot in the Kaw Valley, right outside of town. So they were a good maneuver.
Some of them are sitting right, hit them.
It's called the show of force.
Yeah, and so then they came over. I could hear it coming in. You know, I'm like, this is not commercial. You know, I mean, it's not commercial, but I can hear it. Like, from a long way out, you can hear him coming, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, shit, that's a fighter. You know, and so I started to walk over towards the window, and go, boom, there it went. And the car alarms are going off.
You didn't break the window.
He didn't break our window. I'm sure he broke some windows. You know, but yeah, that was pretty intense. Yeah, that's about the time I decided it's time to get the hell out of that job.
Somebody's got to fix that clock.
We're gonna get rid of it. We're gonna get rid of it, but it's past 10:30. We're good.
Laura's like, why is he not starting? Watching the clock.
So you get across the border without.
All right, you guys ready to go barbecue? Okay, let's see. All right, with the quorum of the board present, I call the meeting to order. Roll call. Commissioner Eriks. Here. Commissioner Baki's here. Commissioner Gibbs. Here. Commissioner Lalonde. Here. Commissioner Hoven. Here. Commissioner Smith. Here. Let it be known Commissioner Timbo is absent. Let's do a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, then the mission of the Great Falls International Airport Authority remains the same. We will not continue with that unless anybody would like to hear more about it. Nope, I think we're good to that. So let's jump right into the reason we're here for the special meeting, the centralized de-icing facility construction project.
Yes, so on excavation of that project, we excavated a good portion of the old runway 7, the runoff end of the runway there. Underneath that, we found a fairly substantial soft spot of highly decomposed sandstone, acts more like clay. The contractor in the field tried to add some gravel to it and roll it in and tamp it to see if we could get enough rigidity that the surface would be okay to build on. But even upon excavating out a little bit more than what we need to excavate to get down to the building surface, that surface just remained very squishy, and you know, any weight at all, even foot weight, the entire surface would move. And so it doesn't look like there is a possibility to build on that. We've got to excavate out a fairly substantial area of it and add back in either crushed concrete or rock, or a combination of the two. So the plan is to pull all that material out, get down to a sandstone base, refill it. It's unclassified excavation, and the material that has to go back in doesn't have to have any testing. It's not like the subgrade where we have to use a very specific material, and that stuff has to be tested for fines and all that type of stuff. This can be virtually anything that we put down in that area, as long as we can get compaction. And so the work's going to only take, I think they're estimating about another 2 to 3 weeks to actually do the work. But we've had to stop work since we tried to excavate that material to see how deep it was, and they've been stopped now for about 3 weeks, I think. So from a schedule perspective, we are running behind. We initially thought we'd be done by Thanksgiving. We're hoping that we can get this done this year, but it looks more likely that we're going to have to get probably the edges of the material in, get an asphalt base down on some of the other area that can winter, and then finish it up in the spring. As the cost of the change orders, you can see the change orders attached. It adds about $1.2 million to the project to excavate and refill. The project now, we're asking to increase the budget from $8.776,500 that was approved back in April to $9.976,500, which is what we think it'll take to finish the project. The current plan is that we're going to divert the 2023 entitlements from the fog seal on taxiway A over to this project to the extent of about $1.1 million. The FAA will be looking for year-end money. So like for instance, our snow broom that the FAA had approved for this year, we just got notice we're going to get the grant on that. We're going to be turning back about $100,000 on that because we're below cost. So as they accumulate those dollars throughout the region, our hope is at the end of the year in October, there'll be $1.1 million that they can dedicate to us from discretionary funds at year end. There's no way to know what the probability of that is because everyone's under construction right now. There will be projects that overrun, there will be projects that underrun. Ideally, we'll have that additional money at the year end, but there's no way to know that. Taxiway A is in pretty good shape. Rod and I were just out there driving, I think it was yesterday. We don't think we need the fog seal from a maintenance perspective immediately. We are going to ask to enter into a test program to try some different materials on that taxiway that would be free to us. The FAA has a test program where they're going to try some new fog seal materials. If we get into that program, it'll be about half the length of the runway or taxiway that'll get fog sealed through that program. The fog seal we did a couple years ago on the runway hasn't adhered that well. We're hoping that there might be a better material anyway. So this will give us some time to test some stuff out, see if we can find a better material, get a portion of the project done anyway, if we can get into that program. If not, we'll have to reprogram taxiway A year or two out, depending on the other priorities we have back into our entitlement funding, if we have to go that route. And so, as you can see on the updated budget, right now we're planning a $1.4 million entitlement to the project. We were already planning to spend $300,000 from this year. We'll be spending another 1.1 from next year. The discretionary money potentially could come in and pay for that. That would increase our discretionary contribution on the project up to $9.2, almost $9.3 million if the FAA can find that additional money. We will have another 10% that we have to put in of that 1.1 million. So the airport will have to contribute another $100,000 to this program to get that project completed. Really the alternatives right now, there aren't good alternatives. Either we fill in the hole and give up, which is an alternative. The problem with that is that work will no longer be eligible because we haven't accomplished a work unit. And so we would have to fund that excavation and refill locally, or we proceed with the change order and get that area excavated and refilled and finish the project. Like I said, we're a little off schedule, but hopefully in early spring we can get that completed.
So if we don't find any extra funds for this year, and we have to wait for the 23 AIP, we've got cash in the bank to finance it and pay the bills until that comes in.
Yeah, we'll be drawing on reserves. Right now we have about $10 million in reserves that we've had, and part of that is the money that we've gotten from the ARPA and CARISA program. We've gone ahead and submitted all of our expenses as we've been going in order to have that money in the bank. We did that because the terminal work was deemed ineligible for those funding processes, and the FAA had said, well, you know, they told all the airports in the region, you can go and pay for your operating expenses and then take the money that you saved and pay for projects that are ineligible. So they kind of created this loophole process. So in the process of that, we've now banked about $4.5 million from those two programs on top of the reserves we were already accumulating to help us pay for the warehouse utilities, which we'll get reimbursed for next summer. So we have a pretty good war chest right now. I don't think this will break that bank, but we will have to monitor cash flow through the terminal project which is also behind schedule, to make sure that we're not drawing down too aggressively and with this additional 1.1 coming out. So there's a chance we could have that money as soon as October if the FAA can find the discretionary money from the current fiscal year. If not, it'll wait until the entitlement grants begin getting issued next spring. We're all hoping that the FAA will get grants out earlier next year, but we hope that often and it doesn't always happen. So it's the most likely scenario is we'd see a grant sometime in around May or June of next year that would reimburse us for the 1.1 million we're going to have out there in float on this. And so, I think we have enough reserves to accomplish what we need to accomplish. We'll basically have 3 draws on reserves right now, one being the terminal project, one being the warehouse project, and then the last one being this project. We will be going to the city council on that warehouse project here in the next couple of weeks. I think we've got our first meeting on August 3rd to begin asking for an increase in that budget. There's also a couple $100,000 that I believe the city will let us begin drawing that's accumulated since we put that application in. So I think we'll be able to begin drawing some of that money back now. That's what we had asked for back when we did the development agreement. And so I think from a cash flow perspective, we're going to be in good shape. We're going to be just fine. But we'll have to continue to monitor that.
What's the status of the update on the warehouse utilities? And
the utilities are done. The electrical companies over there connecting their utilities, they perform their own work. The gas line, actually, the gas company will do once we're closer in construction. But that's a pretty simple portion.
Okay.
Our portion of the utilities is done. The grading contractor asked to wait a few more weeks, and since we're just now ordering the building, we told them, that's probably fine. So they probably won't start work until closer to the end of August. Their work schedule is only a few weeks.
30 days.
Yeah, so they'll be done, before fall. And then we'll have the site graded, we'll have the road in, and we'll basically be ready for the building construction. And we just, I was trading emails with with Josh over at Dick Anderson this morning even. They have some schematics now on the building. So we're hoping to get the real estate listing up here probably in the next month or so for those first 3 units with some schematics of what they look like and that kind of thing. So so that project is moving along.
all in time for TIF money.
Yeah. So we'll have the first discussion with planning on the 3rd, and then after that we'll ask for a commission meeting where we'll go in and ask for an increase in the budget. All of the modeling we've done based on the tax proceeds show that the bond can support plenty of additional cost over there to cover the cost we've actually experienced on that project. You have to remember the development agreement was done nearly 3 years ago now. By the time we get the project bid and everything else, we hit that escalation curve about a year ago, and so it's just more expensive.
And were they able to go with the metal building still?
Yeah, it'll still be a metal building.
And then what's causing our delay in the terminal project?
Mainly, we had to do a SHPO review on the building, which kind of surprised us. This building's only 48 years old, or 47 years old actually. And but the FAA decided that, and the first few projects don't impact the exterior at all. But rules are rules, I suppose. And so they were saying, well, you plan to do several years of terminal work, so you'll eventually be more than 50 years old, and that requires a SHPO review. It's kind of surprising that we have to do SHPO for the ticket counter and things that literally don't impact the bones of the building. Frankly, the only project that really does impact the building is the facade changes, which are 3 or 4 years down the road, and frankly, probably the most speculative of the projects. And we'll get to that if we have enough funding, because related, we may not get to that. So the SHPO review thing was kind of a surprise to everybody, including our engineer, and it delayed us a couple of months to get that done. And then the city permitting got really backed up. So they're using a company out of Colorado or a city out of Colorado to review plans. So we just pulled the permit like last week, I think it came
A
through.
week ago.
Yeah, a week ago, and the SHPO review also came through. So the CADX is completed, the environmental process is done. So now we can start work. And so then the other piece of that, I would like to start in August, but Dick Anderson is pretty backed up. So they would like to start in September. So we're going to try to convince them, look, let's start some elements in August. I mean, just some easy stuff to take the pressure off the TSA screening back there. Let's start pulling some walls down. We can demo the TSA offices over here so that Delta work can proceed. So we're going to hope to get some demo work started here next month. But yeah, you're right. We're we're a month behind schedule at least on that project. They still are fairly confident they can get it done by May, which is really what we need. We need to be out of there in May.
For the next summer season.
For the next summer season, and the potential to have an airline or two added at the end of May, which I think, that's a real possibility. We could see another carrier in here next summer, so.
Back to the decentralized de-icing pen. How deep did they actually go to find the sandstone?
It varies, but I think in the deepest part, it's close to 3 feet, isn't it?
Over 39 inches.
39 inches, yep. And then in other places, it's closer to 2 feet. So it's a healthy amount of material.
Gotcha. All right. So with that, can I get a motion to authorize the staff to issue change order to increase project budget for the centralized de-icing facility to an amount not to exceed $9,976,500, along with the accompanying changes to the financial plan?
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
I'll second.
Got a second and a motion. And any further comments, discussion from the board?
Does this look like it would impact anything else? Like, is it indicative of a bigger problem?
No, the bubble stops well before A. So I mean, I think, and if you look at it, it's on like this big amoeba shape that's kind of out there centered in the middle. So the edges on either side of it are sandstone. I mean, they hit sandstone pretty readily, but it doesn't seem like it creeps outside the footprint of this project. And I mean, it looks like there might even be some spring activity down there because it was surprisingly wet when they got in there. It's probably good to have some heavier or a deeper section of gravel to provide some drainage to keep that from coming up. Because as long as it stays down there in the gravel layer, it shouldn't really cause any issue. But if it bubbles up into the asphalt layer or even up into the concrete layer, blow joints and you'll get heave and that kind of thing. So. And that's not uncommon. I mean, every airfield I've ever worked on had spring activity. Frankly, this is probably the driest airfield I've ever worked on. Colorado Springs had some pretty active springs in the terminal ramp, and SeaTac had a couple of real geysers going. And so it's not uncommon to have that. It is unusual in that we're on top of a butte. You would think everything's going that way, but it doesn't always happen that way.
I've got a big spring at my house, and basically the water comes down in the rain, and then it hits that sandstone, and it runs along that, and then anywhere you get a drop is where that pools up, and that's where your springs pop
Yeah,
out.
this whole hill weeps out the sides of it.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time.
So, one question I haven't asked on the de-icing pad, are we doing any additional drain piping that goes into the evaporation ponds? Or is that all contained in the current, underneath the current pad?
So we're changing the location of the drain. We want the sides to both drain to the current, to the slip drain. But there's no additional, added drain or
We're just
anything
gonna
like
move that drain
They're gonna move it.
to the edge of it.
Goes, I
It'll
guess
be
that's
on the far
west.
side, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they'll pipe into the
Same pipe.
existing, and it'll,
Okay, so you don't have to go all the way to the evaporation pond, you're gonna take it into the existing pipe somewhere along the way?
yeah, that goes to the pond.
Gotcha.
It's
So-
just across the project.
Yeah. It's always best if you can to get everything going one direction. I mean, over at FedEx, we have the mid-ramp drain, and the problem with that is you always end up with the plows, smacking into that drain, and so everywhere I've seen that, it's always been problematic. It's best if you can get a ramp edge drain.
Sounds like the engineers didn't get a deep enough hole for it.
No, the samples, when they read the samples, they thought they were gonna hit sandstone.
No, I mean, I'm talking for the middle trains.
Oh.
That you're always hitting with the cloud.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Any further discussion? Questions? All right, I got a motion, a second, and with no further discussion, all in favor of staff request for a change order to increase the project budget for the de-icing pad not to exceed $9,976,500. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, spend it wisely. Okay.
Dig it a hole.
All right. I know, we're digging a hole.
Dig a hole.
Hey, is this gonna include sod for the new runway?
We're gonna put the, are we gonna put the cable barriers back up so we're permanent? All right, any further airport authority board comment? Commissioner Hogan,
No, thank you.
Commissioner Gibbs, Commissioner Eriks,
No, sir.
Commissioner Smith,
No.
Commissioner Lund. I have no further comments. Any additional public comments? All right, with no further comments, any airport board comments? No further comments, no further business to come before the board. I declare this meeting adjourned, and we will reconvene at what, 12 o'clock?
Whenever you guys like, you can come over, we'll start anytime now.
What time do you?
11:30, I think there's F-18s